Or he's in a better place. And then in my mind, I would never say it, but in my head, I'm like, have you seen the other place? Like, what does it look like?
Right.
But I think people should just stop it after they say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Stop after I'm sorry is how I have felt.
And affirm their feelings. This is terrible. No one should have to live through this.
Yes.
I understand what you're feeling.
Yes.
Those are the things
So,
I think you should say.
Yes. So as far as grief,
Wait 1 second for the sound. I don't know if you guys can hear that sound, but I'm going to wait. Okay. Sounds like they're apprehending the guy right down the street for stopping so abruptly.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So shortly after I lost Richard, I went to see a grief therapist, and she was actually a suicide grief therapist, which is really what I needed at the time. And what grief counseling taught me was so valuable. She gave me a schedule that I should follow because you sort of have to learn how to get out of bed, how to eat, how to do things again because you're so overwhelmed by this huge, huge loss. And the other thing that she taught me was, and I think this can help people, that a person that leaves by suicide, it's like there's a fire burning inside of them, and it goes on, the pain goes on for so long. They have to do the only thing they know how to do, and that's to leave the pain behind.
Right.
And the other thing that therapy was vital in me getting out there again. I kind of thought, was there something I could do? And I think a lot of people have guilt about what could I have done? What years and years of work taught me after walking in my grief, talking in my grief, sitting in my grief, doing all the grief work, you kind of go, well, why didn't these programs help him?
Right.
Why couldn't the unrelenting love of all of his family help him? And he was getting married. He had this life he had built. But what therapy taught me is that his suicide was unstoppable.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about suicide. Some people say people are doing it for attention, for all sorts of reasons. But what you're saying really makes it clear, at least in this case, it was something that no matter what, in his good moments, in his bad moments, that pain was still there, and he couldn't get rid of it. And it was a decision he felt like he really had to make.
He felt he couldn't live on drugs and he couldn't live sober because he lived both ways, and he lived both ways in pain.
And I always hear when you see these programs about suicide or these even made-for-TV movies, at the end it says, say something to someone, just tell someone, call this hotline.
Yes.
But for people really struggling with this, it seems like that's almost, not a realistic thing because they are keeping this to themselves because they're planning this out. It's something they want to do.
It's something they want to do. He planned, I believe, that whole Barry White, listening to Barry White and smiling and, acting really happy. He knew what he was going to do, and there was evidence found in his apartment that he was planning it. And then when I got his phone and I went through his phone, he was planning it.
Isn't that interesting after the fact to try to put the pieces together? I mean, I've done that now in 2 situations, and, to look at their phones, my father they didn't have phones back then, but like that. But it was more looking at notes, so 2 days after they let me leave the therapeutic boarding school and go to his house. And I was looking where things were. I was seeing what was in the shower. I was seeing what was on his bedside table, and to kind of put those pieces together really was helpful for me. I mean, I didn't realize it till later, but it was a sense of closure. I needed to know what he saw. I needed to know where he was at, the smells, the sounds, what was going on outside the window. I don't know. It just, for me, made me feel closer. So did that help you kind of with getting a feeling of being closer to him because you were in the same place he was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it answered a lot of questions. I also have stayed close friends with a really cute family that he was friends with, and they've weren't able to have children, and now they have 4. So Richard didn't know any of that, but he was very close with them, and they live in St. Paul and visit me with their kids, and they feel connected to him, and I feel connected to them, and it's been a really, really great relationship.
Yeah.
Too hard to see the fiance. I did that a few times, and we both just got really upset. And I tried doing it with a couple of my friends, just not one-on-one, and it was still the same. And we both agreed that it would be better for us, both of us, on our journey. She used to come up and leave white roses on his grave, so I always knew when she was there. But, I always wish her well and happiness, but she and I are a little bit better this way.
Right. It's interesting, after my fiance died, there was a lot of people that had blame, even though terrorists were what killed my fiance,
Yes.
but for whatever reason, there was blame. So I was never close to the family, which to this day still is upsetting to me, because those are the people you think should be the closest to you and understand what that loss is like. I'm still friends with some of the guys who were not at work that day that he worked with, that got out of the building, whatever it is. And to me, that's great. But it is hard, because everyone does want to blame somebody, and everyone has their own feelings about what happened. Or sometimes it's just too hard to be around someone who was there.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about finding joy after this, because I
Yes.
know you've done the work, and I want to
Yes.
get into that for people to listen to, because some people are listening to this and thinking, okay, well, I'm in this. I know these feelings. People say with time it eases pain, but I can't get out of bed, whatever. I'm stuck. Explain what pivotal moments you went through or created for yourself to make the path for that joy for yourself, to learn how to live again after this loss.
Well, the first year was very fuzzy, but I ended up walking. I ended up just every day getting up, and I would go for a walk. And, at the time I was living in Chicago year-round, and I would, in the middle of the winter, I would just put the clothes on and get out there and walk 6 miles.
Wow.
And I would make it we live on a lake, Lake Forest, and I would walk. My goal was to walk to the lake, which was 6 miles from my house. The water was very soothing, the sounds, the air, the fresh air. That was my first step in really starting to try to live again. And then I started to see amazing signs. And
Tell me about some of those.
some of the signs. Well, I will tell you that monarch butterflies visit me all the time if I'm at the cemetery. My first birthday after Richard left, friends of mine picked me up, and we went down to a restaurant that was on the 8th floor, of outdoor restaurant in Chicago. And I was just sort of sitting there, ordered tofu because Richard would have. And all of a sudden, this huge monarch butterfly comes, circles my head, dances around the table, circles the table, dances around my head again, and then flutters off. And I looked up and I said, "Did everyone see that?" And we were all in shock.
Yeah.
We were all in shock. So the butterfly, I wear a butterfly every day that my mom gave me. The butterfly is definitely, and I know a lot of people are comforted by maybe a squirrel or a cardinal.
Right.
That is very comforting, very, very comforting. And so signs started coming, and they were pretty incredible.
And you believe in these signs. They help comfort you.
I believe in the signs because I believe that there's an unstoppable power of love. And love is unstoppable. And love is around all the time, and even in death, and even in your grief.
Yeah.
And that's very comforting.
Yeah.
And finding joy, for a long time, feeling guilt when I would start to just feel a little teeny bit of joy. I would go, no, I can't, nope, I can't smile. I can't do that because I'm in grief. And then you just do the work.
Yeah.
And you find joy again. I went on a 60th birthday trip with 16 women from around the country that have been friends for almost, new friends from Florida, but all my life.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I can say I laughed for 4 days and didn't feel guilty about it.
Right.
And it was, talk about therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.